Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Vets to PM Military Transition Academy podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Misty Marino. This podcast is dedicated to helping military service members and veterans achieve a meaningful and lucrative post-service career. We cover a wide range of topics from project management certifications to the DOD SKillbridge program and everything in between. In today's episode, we have the privilege of hosting Rachel Mascola. Rachel shares why she decided to separate from the Army, how a 12-week DOD SKillbridge program set her up for success, and what she's doing now to ensure others are prepared for the civilian sector. Join us as we discuss with Rachel how to make the military transition yours. Let's dive in. Welcome, Rachel, to the show. Please introduce yourself for our audience.
Hi, thank you so much, Misty. I'm excited to be here today. My name is Rachel Mascola. I'm a advisory senior consultant at Deloitte. I am an expert in international development organizations, helping organizations refine their existing systems and processes. My work approach is very logical and analytical. I like sharing my experiences, soaking up knowledge with others, and I continue to strive both personally and professionally each and every day. I come from a military background where I was a professional and strongly achieved my results. My organizational and technical skills definitely put me to where I am today. I thrive in fast-paced environments. I'm always looking for a new challenge. I hold a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and have leadership and a supervisorial experience that I gained as a military police officer during my time in the Army. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. All right. Well, how long did you serve in the Army?
So my service is kind of split a little bit. I originally joined actually when I was a senior in high school. I wanted to go to college, but really felt a strong pull towards joining and serving, and my parents were like, "You're crazy. Why do you want to do that? Go to college." I'm like, "I want to go to college, Mom and Dad. I will, but I feel this pull and I want to join." And they said, "All right, listen, we'll pay for your school if you do reserves." And I'm like, "All right, deal."
Sure, yeah.
So joined the reserves, went through basic AIT, went to college, and then 4 years later commissioned as an active duty Army officer. And so then I served as an Army officer for a little over 4 years before deciding ultimately that it was time to get out.
Awesome. So when it came to the time that, you were thinking about getting out, we at Vets to PM, we always talk about it's never too early and it's never too late to prepare for your military transition. So take us back to that time frame when you were thinking to yourself, I think the next step is for me to separate and do something different. What did you do to prepare for your military transition?
When I decided to transition, it was actually it was a hard choice for me. I had such an incredible group of people that I met through the military. I mean, all my friends, the people around me. I was living in Colorado Springs, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Skiing every other weekend, just really enjoying life. Except there was also a part of me that was missing. And I think the biggest part was being extremely far away from my family. And then my husband, who was actually my college sweetheart, also an active duty Army officer, we spent, out of the 5 years we were married, I think we spent maybe half of that time in the same place. And even if we were in the same place, one of us would be in the field or one of us would be out on mission doing whatever, just because of the jobs that we each had in the military. And, you don't get married to spend time apart. So I think that was kind of where a big transition in my head said, okay, I can either continue to be a rock star at work and put, 18 hours a day in and let my marriage fail, or I can turn a note and say, okay, I actually want my marriage to work. I want to invest in my family and take care of myself a little bit. And that's ultimately what I decided mattered most to me, which was my family. And that's kind of why I decided to leave. So it was hard. It wasn't an easy decision by any means.
Yeah, it's not an easy decision really for anyone. There's no way that you could be a rock star at work and also be an equal rock star at home, regardless if you're, if you have children, if you're married, whatever it may be, like something is going to suffer. So you made that decision like, hey, we don't get married to be apart. I love that. And, I always kind of make a joke that my husband and I, we served together for 20 years. We met I think we each had, about 4 years in. And we spent a lot of our time apart. We spent a lot of our time on different shifts. And we joke that sometimes that's probably why we've lasted so long.
Sure.
but I understand where you're coming from. So you made the decision, okay, I want to go ahead and be an actual wife and be in the same house and not have the field or any of this, interfering in our marriage. So was there anything that you did specifically to prepare? You're a little different because you already had a degree. So most civilians like myself, I joined the Air Force in 2000, and I make a joke all the time, but it took me 19 years to get my degree, but I got my degree and I would be up a creek without a paddle if I didn't have a degree. So you've already had a degree. So take us through what an officer does in order to get prepared for their transition as far as logistics, like as far as trying to find that post-service career.
Yeah, so that's definitely a hard thing to do. So after you have to drop a refrad packet, which is a request to leave the military. You have to have an 06 signature on it, which isn't the easiest thing if you're on a brigade staff as a staff primary. So definitely make sure you talk to your bosses ahead of time, let them know. Extremely important. I did not. I kind of kept them in the dark for a long time because I was always afraid as soon as I tell people I'm getting out, they're going to write me off. They're going to say, oh, I don't want to work with her, or they're no longer going to think that I'm a valuable member to the team. And that was always something important to me, teamwork. So then what I really did during this time is figure out like, what are my values and what do I want to do? And I really wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to land. I didn't know I was going to end up as a consultant at Deloitte, to be honest. I didn't know I was going to work in international organizations. I had no idea. I probably couldn't even have told you how to spell Deloitte when I was getting it.
True, I still can't. Yeah,
right, exactly. Like I had never even heard of them before. And that's when I decided to apply for a 12-week fellowship program that is available for active duty service members. And during that time, basically, you spend 12 weeks fully immersed in a company. I was lucky enough to get picked by Deloitte to do my fellowship with them. So I did a 12-week fellowship program with them. And during that time, I used my leadership skills and a lot of the discipline that I learned in the military to fully invest and dive into that experience, and honestly started building a network. There were days that I was like, man, my combat boots would be way easier than working at this company. But they saw something in me and they gave me a full-time offer at the end of that 12 weeks. And I was like, oh, thank goodness. Now I don't have to look anymore. And, that's a scary thing to say because I feel like a lot of veterans, they take the first job that they get. And I definitely did that. I took the first job that I got. It worked out for me and I'm very lucky. It's been 2 years now and I can say I made a great decision, but there are still days that I'm like, was it the best decision? And I don't know if it always will feel that way or not, but I definitely learned so much through that time. In that 12 weeks, I really took the time to figure myself out. And I met an amazing mentor, probably one of the best people I've ever met. And he said to me, Rachel, go take a walk in the woods for a while, because this is not just a transition. This is a complete transformation.
Yes.
And honestly, that resonates so deep with me because it was a transformation of my life. Not only was I going from active duty, working in a skiff, being around my friends all day long, I was moving to a new state because my husband just got moved to a different location for the military. So I wouldn't have any friends. I was going to be completely remote at this new job. And I didn't even know how to do this new job. So it was scary. It was definitely a scary transition. And that's why I was lucky to have kind of 12 weeks to get a little bit more and learn about myself through that process.
Yeah. So I believe you're talking about the DOD SKillbridge program, and there's so many companies out there that offer fellowships or internships or residencies, whatever it may be. And it's definitely something that if you have the opportunity no matter what service you're in, take advantage of it. And I always say, let your command or your service tell you no before you discount yourself. So even if someone says, hey, I'm not going to approve you for this, okay, prove it. And so then submit your application and let them say no to you. And the DOD SKillbridge program, or CSP, whatever you call it, it's for the logistics of the military transition, but it really can help you with what you just, told us about, is the transformation. And I loved what you said was, I'm not really sure if this was the right job for me. And, people take the first job that comes to them. And I think that's because veterans are operating in this scarcity mindset, right? Yesterday, I read this statistic, and it said 43% of veterans within their first year of the military transition, within their first job, their first civilian job, they leave their first civilian job, 43% within the first year. 80% leave within the second year. Ooh. And so,
I've crossed that mark, luckily.
Yeah, I was at my first civilian job for 3 years and 7 months. So I started when I was going down this research rabbit hole, because once I hear a statistic, I want to know all the research behind it. A lot of people were stating like people weren't prepared, whatever it may be. But something that you mentioned, it's like, I don't know if 43% are actually not prepared. I think 43% are discovering who they actually are out of uniform. And so when you first separate, especially a military officer or senior NCO, right, where your identity is kind of wrapped up into your title and your rank and whatever it may be, you're very militarized when you first separate or retire. And so it will take a little bit of time to discover, what does Misty like? What does Rachel really care for? What are my values? What are my morals? And, the people that say, well, that stuff shouldn't change in your life. But yes, it does. Like, who I am as a person is totally different now at age 46 than it was at 20. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So 43% of veterans are leaving their first civilian job because they're actually discovering maybe what they actually want from their post-service career and post-service life, what they actually want to do, and I always share this 3.7 years later from, at a really like international company, Continental Tire, I realized like, no, I don't like high-paced, high ops tempo anymore, but that doesn't mean that the company was bad. The company was amazing to me, but we changed. So talk us through a little bit of that transformation. We talk about the military transition a lot, but your mentor said, hey, get ready for this transformation. So why don't you take us through, what did that transformation look like for you?
Yeah, so I think the first part of my transformation was, how do I work from home? How do I make
do you
sure
have any tips?
I actually do. Working from home, it requires a immense amount of discipline and structure. Actually, before we hopped on this call, Misty and I were joking about dressing nice, right? Like,
yes,
sometimes that's part of that discipline, is like, I'm going to get up this morning, I'm going to take a shower, I'm going to go to work. And whether that's in my office, in my house, or at a coffee shop, you have to have some sort of dedicated spot and then have a routine each and every day. And that was something that I learned in the military. I was used to, I wake up, I brush my teeth, I put on my PTs, I go to PT. After PT, I shower. After I shower, I have a coffee, and then I start my work day. And I realized I needed that routine. When I first started working from home and I was feeling like, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed, something's not right, I realized taking a step back, go back in the woods and figure out what my values, what do I need? Part of my identity was my routine, my daily routine. And since then, every single day, I still wake up at 6 a.m. every morning. I get up, I do a workout, whether that's going for a run, going to the gym, or doing a home workout, or sometimes I just go for a walk around the neighborhoods. What it looks like that day to me is what it looks like. And then I come home, I make breakfast, I have my coffee, I shower, and then I get ready for the day. Sometimes I don't dress nice. That's okay. At first I did, I've definitely loosened up a little bit on my own reins, but definitely having that daily routine that included the same things that I did for the entire 4 years I was active duty really helped me tremendously with my transition. And then with my workspace at home, I have it be a separate space from the rest of my house. So when I go to work, it is in my own home office. It is a clean workspace without all kinds of clutter, without anything other than work stuff in the office. And then when I shut my laptop for the day, when I'm done for the day, I leave the office and I don't go back in there. I don't go in there to hang out. I don't go in there on the weekends unless I have to work. But I make it a dedicated spot that is solely for working and solely for getting things done.
Yeah, that's good.
With
and
minimal distractions for
absolutely.
sure.
And we have, we've helped 16,000 veterans transition. And especially right now, we have the DOD SKillbridge program. So we're very similar to hiring our heroes and 4 Block and whatever it may be. And so we talk to, people that are transitioning all the time. And, the biggest buzzword now is remote, remote, remote. And I always try to mentor people and say, just really remote is, you have to remember there's a difference between being remote and having time flexibility, because they are not always synonymous, right? So like my sister has a remote job where she has to be like green at 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. You know what I mean? Like there's no flexibility as far as you can go here, you can go there, you can just do your work. As soon as you get your work done, you're good. So any veteran that is transitioning and kind of looking for maybe a remote job, difference, is it actually remote? Do you have time flexibility? What does that entail? Like for me, we have a flexible job. So I work remote, but it's flexible. So the only time that I have to be online really is at 12 o'clock on Tuesdays for our staff meeting, and then just be available for whenever people need. But we're very projectized. So we do a lot of projects, and that our productivity is measured versus our presence. And that's different. Okay. So getting used to working from home, that's one part of your transformation, and you mentioned you wanted to be, married to your husband in the same place. And so sometimes I think it's an untapped market. People don't talk about the transition that marriages make or families make when you separate or when you retire. My husband and I only knew each other in the military. And so when we both retired the same exact day, we were like, oh, well, there goes our common denominator.
Yeah, now what?
So why don't you kind of talk us through, we have a lot of people that listen that, are experiencing similar things.
Yes, absolutely.
Marriages transition too. So why don't you talk us through that?
Absolutely. So, me and my husband were both active duty, and he originally wanted to get out first, and then it just didn't work out for him because his refrad got denied. And so I was the lucky one that got out first. And I think he was a little jealous, especially during my 12-week fellowship. He struggled actually, because I was home and I was off by 4 or 5 o'clock every day, and he wasn't getting home till 6 or 7. And he's like, man, you're just, sitting around all day doing nothing. I'm like, I'm not doing nothing. I'm just, doing this internship. And I think at first it was kind of like an envy thing where he still had to get up every day. He still had to go into work and was home late. And we'd also just moved to a new place. And I think that was hard for sure. But after some time, and I had 90 days of leave, which was crazy. So after my fellowship ended, I had a long time to kind of invest back into my marriage, invest back into our new home, and try to, when he came home, I'd have dinner ready. And we realized how much we actually really enjoyed eating dinner together every night, and then going for an evening walk and just talking about his day, because I didn't have a whole lot to talk about, but we'd talk about his day, or just spending more time together instead of, I feel like a lot of times after, when we were both active duty, on the nights that we'd be home, it was like, all right, who's cooking and, what's on TV? It was never really spending quality time together. It was more just, oh, I'm exhausted. I don't feel like talking to you. Let's eat and go to bed. Or let's eat and have the TV on. So then we were like, you know what? We're going to not have the TV on while we eat. We're going to sit down at the kitchen table, which I don't think we had ever used before then, except for like maybe holidays.
We don't even have a kitchen table, just
right,
to let you know.
Right. And then kind of figure out where we wanted to go from there. And then, after a year and a half, he decided it was time for him to get out. And that was also another trying time in our marriage because at this point, I had been at my company for about a year and he was now going to transition and he didn't have a job lined up. So he was getting out without a job lined up and I was going to be the sole income in our house. And I have no problem with that as a woman. I'm like, empowerment, absolutely. I will be the sole provider, but it's also like, but you're going to drive me crazy if you're home all the time and I work from home. So you need to find something to do.
Yeah.
So that was definitely also difficult, but I think that the biggest thing is kind of relearning each other and like what your goals are, what makes you what made you love that person. And we always tried to go back to our anniversary, reading our vows and going back to like the basics and the reasons why we were married, because marriage is hard, especially dual military marriages. Honestly, any marriage to a military service member is hard. So I give props to both the men and women, whether you're a military spouse or you're the other end of it, you are the spouse in the military getting out. It's not easy because we have a different mindset. And I think that's why veterans kind of click together too. Because we do have such a different mindset than other people, which also does make it hard when you're transitioning because you're like, okay, I don't have my people that I can lean on all the time to do all the things for me. Or, I had a rough day at work and I want to complain to my coworkers about it because they understand. But if you're remote, you don't have that option. And then you can't complain about your spouse to your
spouse
or to your spouse, You talk to the dog, I guess, but the dog doesn't even really understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So knowing what you know now, let's kind of break that down. So your transformation, your 12-week fellowship, your DOD SKillbridge opportunity, and then, obviously being separated and then your husband's still in. So knowing what you know now, what are a few tips and tools for the SKillbridge? And then we'll talk about for adjusting your marriage. So what about the SKillbridge? Anything that you would tell, someone that is starting their SKillbridge tomorrow?
So everyone hates this word. It's not a dirty word, I promise. Networking. And it's so funny because whenever I say that to veterans, like I talk to a lot of veterans because I'm super passionate about it and I can get more into that later, but don't sit back during your transition. Whether you're doing a SKillbridge or not, when you're getting out, you've got that time. You say, okay, I've got 90 days of leave, right? I'm transitioning in 90 days. Take that time, lean in and be proactive, whether that's building a LinkedIn profile, which honestly, through the TAP program, everybody can get a free year of LinkedIn. Excuse me, like go, if you don't do it, I'm judging you because you should take your free year of LinkedIn. It is huge. It'll help you tremendously. It was such a godsend for me, honestly. I still use LinkedIn.
Don't overcomplicate setting up the LinkedIn.
No,
the Department of Labor book tells you exactly how to set up a LinkedIn from TAP. Just do it. That's
absolutely
whatever you see in the Department of Labor book, like for the resume, for the TAP, for the interview, it's exactly what you need to do for, the transition. Department of Labor. That's who is governing this, this work thing. So LinkedIn. And one thing about networking, my friend Joel just posted on LinkedIn. He said networking is not equal to LinkedIn. So it's one thing you need to establish your LinkedIn profile.
It's a tool.
Yeah. And start connecting. But you tell us, what does networking look like for you?
So I think networking is actively seeking opportunities to reach out to individuals. Don't just go. So if LinkedIn is your tool that you're using, don't just click on Rachel Mascola and hit connect because, okay, cool. Rachel accepted your connection. Now what? Nothing. How about send a private message to that individual that you're connecting with? Strategically network. Search for companies. Say if you're really interested in working for Deloitte, like I was. I would search Deloitte on your search and then find those people that you have in common. Use your first, second, third connections. Like, oh, okay, I see that this person was also in the military and they also work at the company I want to work at. Maybe I reach out to them. I send them a private message. I tell them a little bit about myself and ask them if they're willing to talk to me. Most people want to help you. I would just say, like, when people reach out to me, if someone just connects with me, I'll usually accept them. But really the ones that stick out are the ones that send that private message and they say, hey, I saw you do this. I saw you're involved with this. Help, or can you help me? And even if I can't, I might point you to someone that can, because it's not about who that person is, but it's also about who that person knows. That's networking. You reach out to one person and then they give you other people to help you grow and succeed. It's not just the immediate person. You're now broadening yourself to everybody that they have access to.
Absolutely. And always be networking. Like,
yes,
I see it often. Veterans will, network and go hardcore on LinkedIn, and then they get a job, and then you never until all of a sudden they've either been laid off or they resigned, and now they have a green banner and they're in their network, but they haven't deposited this entire time. And so always be networking.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter if like you have a great job at Deloitte. I had a great job at Continental, and now with Vets to PM, I am always networking. I'm always updating everything. You just never know, and I call it stacking the deck. You want to stack the deck enough to where if you ever have to, kind of take some away from your deck, you're able to. All right.
Absolutely.
So send a message via LinkedIn, reference something that you maybe saw or whatever it may be. And what does networking look like outside of LinkedIn?
So outside of LinkedIn, it's not just about networking socially, but also you can network everywhere you go. You're at a coffee shop and you are standing behind someone and you see that they have a shirt on that says a company that you've heard of before. You can talk to that person. You can use your about me branding statement, your elevator pitch, whatever you want to call it. You can use that anywhere and everywhere you go. You could be on the airplane. It's funny because I actually hate the people on the airplane that want to talk to me, but then I've actually had the best conversations on the airplane. So I shouldn't say I hate it, because I met a gentleman just a few weeks ago. I was flying and he just started chatting with me because he saw that my bag said Deloitte, and he's like, oh, you work for corporate? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I used to work for corporate and then I hated my job and decided to quit and start in my own business. And now he's an extremely successful businessman. I got his card, got his information, and who knows, one day if I ever need something from his business, because that's networking. That's how you network. You just have to be willing and be a little vulnerable. It's scary, but it's also like, it's just conversation. It's just having a conversation with another human being. And if that person doesn't want to talk to you, okay, oh well, go talk to someone else.
Yeah. And when it comes to networking too, we have to, my sole purpose when I network personally or when people network with me, it's like, what can I teach and what can I learn? Right. So what can I teach and what can I learn? It's never about what can I get, and
Absolutely.
a really good example of that is I have a connection on LinkedIn. Her name is Jessica, and she's a resume writer. She has a great company and her LinkedIn profile is amazing. So it's, I think it's Jessica Hernandez. But she just reached out to me the other day asking me to sort of beta test something. And I was like, wow, that's, she's like, you always reply to my emails. Cause I do, I do, because they're really good. And I'm always, liking her posts and commenting. And she's like, I'd love for you to beta test something. So I thought that was cool. And then, later on today, she's like, hey, I have this veteran in my LinkedIn course. I would love for you to connect with him. And so what am I learning, and what can I teach others? And so he's a veteran, he's about to transition. And regardless of what people say, like helping people is more for me, not for them, because it fills my cup. It makes me feel good. So yeah. So networking. So, when you're starting your DOD SKillbridge or getting prepared, start with networking. And I do want to mention something because you are proving my point here. You've mentioned a couple of things from TAP. And I know that there's a lot of negativity, surrounded by TAP. But when it comes to TAP, like you talked about LinkedIn, they teach you how to do this. They give you a free year membership. And LinkedIn Premium comes with, one, you get a lot more access to people via messaging, whatever it may be. You can see people's profiles. And especially if you're sort of like influencer or someone, you can see analytics, whatever, but also learning. And LinkedIn Learning is amazing. It's like Coursera, but it's right there, so like whatever, if you're given a free year premium, like it's not just for, connecting like 10 times plus. It's LinkedIn Learning, a lot of access to groups and stuff like that. So, all right.
I'm
Any other
so
tips?
glad that you mentioned LinkedIn Learning.
Yeah.
I am such an advocate for LinkedIn Learning. I can't even begin to tell you because, part of the transition is also understanding what you don't know. When I went to corporate, there was so many things I didn't know. Nowadays, students, they graduate from college and they are 1,000 times smarter than I am currently because all the new technology and all these things changing and AI, and I had no idea what machine learning was when I was getting out of the military. I was still typing on Excel like old fashioned. I didn't know what Tableau was. I'd never heard of any of these crazy things. And now my new job is expecting me to do these things. And I'm like, oh, darn. Okay. So what did I do? Most people will hop onto YouTube. Well, I'm going to tell you what, LinkedIn Learning is like YouTube 1,000 times better. And I went on there, I spent hours just watching videos, and you can take courses, and they have a lot of times most of the time, they even have resources so you can follow along and practice and do practical exercises. And it's free, one. Two, if you fail the exercise, it's not like it actually goes anywhere. No one will know that you failed it. You could take it again and try it again. Yeah. But honestly, it helped me tremendously. And I actually told my manager that when I first came over to Deloitte. I was like, I'm using LinkedIn Learning almost on the daily just to learn how to do something, because I could type in there, how do I use a VLOOKUP, or how do I do this? And I could watch like a 10-minute clip and show me how to do it. And if I couldn't figure it out, I could do step-by-step through it. And then I'm like, boom, I'm a genius now. I can do it. So
yeah, Tap
is so important. It is, because I would have never known about I would have never known about premium. I would have never got LinkedIn Learning for free. And then I probably wouldn't even continue to be where I am. So I agree with you. People have negative connotations about it, but I think it's because they don't know that it does have some, I mean, of course it's boring. No one wants to sit there and go through all these classes, but there are some aspects of it that are so crucial to getting out. So don't be so negative about it. Just sit through it and understand that the people that are also teaching TAP, they really care. And they're a part of your network now. So
yeah. And if you approach TAP thinking, what you're not going to learn, how terrible it's going to be, and how boring it is, and blah, 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 then guess what? You're going to have a terrible experience because you 100% manifested it. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if anyone wants to say that that's not true. It's 100% true. If you think you can, then you will. If you think you can't, you probably won't, right? So approach TAP with the mindset of, what am I going to learn? What will I take away? Not it's, TAP is not, I hear a lot, like TAP is supposed to help me with this and TAP is supposed to help me with that. Actually, it's not. So if you look at the focus of TAP, so if you did your transition counseling and you did your virtual TAP like you were supposed to before you actually go to the TAP, and not just click, 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 what you put into it is what you'll get out of it. And I will tell you, I am a LinkedIn success story because of TAP. And when I say success story, I was sourced from LinkedIn. So ultimately, that's what you want to do, right? You want to get sourced from LinkedIn. Continental found me on LinkedIn because of my profile, because of my keywords, because of this, because of that. Were able to see me, hint, 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 because recruiters have the back door. And if you're a LinkedIn Premium, they get a special search, right?
Yes.
So so that's awesome. So network, it is your net worth, but it's not just LinkedIn. It's taking it outside of LinkedIn, and then, think about what you can learn, and then also what you can teach others. All right. So when it comes to your marriage, if you knew then what you know now, we have a lot of, enlisted and officers that are in kind of the same position that we were in. also in the military. So any tips and tools when it comes to managing relationships or families through the military transition?
Sure. Well, one, never stop dating your spouse,
Mm.
because the second you stop dating your spouse, someone else will. So am I wrong? I
Loud,
mean,
girl.
let's be 100%,
It's true.
everyone
If you
wants
stop
to,
cooking,
that's
we'll get
right.
food
Everyone
somewhere
wants to
else.
feel wanted. Everyone wants to feel desired and loved. And,
Yeah.
you got married for a reason. Maybe it was for the wrong reasons. Maybe it wasn't, but I'd hope that you got married for the right reasons. I know I did. I loved my husband. I loved who he was. I loved the man he was, and I loved our relationship together. But I didn't love spending all that time apart and then not really remembering who he was. Why did I marry you? So kind of go back to the drawing board, start dating them and go on dates, do things together, spend time together, quality time, not quantity, quality. You could
Yeah.
spend 10 hours in the same room with them and not say a word, and that's quantity, but where's the quality in that? Do something that makes you guys smile, that makes you remember your love for each other, and do something that matters to you, and try to draw near to each other. And when the going gets hard, you go together. You make
Yeah.
things work as a couple.
That's so true. And dating looks different. My husband and I, we never go out on dates, but we date every day. Like he was in here, right before he left to go coach, and we had a great conversation for 30 minutes. Like,
Awesome.
when you separate, when you retire and your family's also going through the transition, it's
Yes.
important to just kind of recognize that we're all going to change in relationships, whether it's a best friend relationship, a coworker relationship, or a marriage or a partnership, whatever it may be. And I will tell you right now, we've been retired for 4 years. And I will have to say, I think this is the best 4 years of our marriage. And
Awesome.
ultimately, it's because I'm getting to see him do really different things, be with his son, living his best life,
Sure.
once he retired. And obviously we retired, so we're blessed, we have a pension, whatever. But he's also seen me do different things, like discover new likes and hobbies and whatever it is. So that's awesome. So date your spouse, and then yeah, when the going gets tough, dig your heels in,
That's
you
right.
know, dig
And
your heels in.
communicate.
Yeah.
You have to communicate with what you need from your spouse too. And I think not only with your spouse, but with your family. When I was transitioning out, there were things that I needed my family to understand about where I currently was at. My head was not 100% screwed on, right? Like there
Yeah.
was just some things that were, it's emotional. It's a big, huge trend. Like I said, it's a transformation of your entire life. So I made sure to communicate not only with my spouse to what I needed from him, and then asking him what he needed from me, but also with my parents and with my siblings, with the other people that are in my immediate, realm of family that I consider to be talking to on a daily basis. So this way they understood, hey, we need to give Rachel a little bit of grace here because she might just need this, or maybe we need to push her on these things. When I was feeling like, oh, I'm working from home, I have no friends, and blah, blah, blah. How do I do this? Instead of my mom just being like, oh, I feel sorry for you, she was like, well, then have you gone out and tried to meet people? Have you done things?
Yeah.
She gave me that pushback, and I'm like, you know what? Dang, she just called me out, but she's right. You have to do things
It's like
because
that meme that's like, I have a headache. Well, have you drank water today? No. Have you no. Like,
right,
yeah, yeah, you have to go
exactly.
and do things.
So I think that's a part of the communication too. When you're getting out, you've got to communicate what you need and then figure it out a little, maybe try to figure out while you're still in, hey, this is what I do now. This is what keeps me successful on a daily basis, whether that's the gym or a walk or a podcast or whatever you do to keep yourself, your mind right.
Yeah.
Don't stop that when you get out. Don't stop doing the things that kept you going every day while you were in the military, because I know a lot of transitioning members said that, especially young officers, I've heard this so many times, like, I had to get out for my mental health. Okay, what did you do while you were in every single day to protect your mental health? Okay,
Yeah,
do that thing when you get out too, because if you stop doing that, your mental health will still decline.
absolutely. And contrary to popular belief, just because you separate and just because you retire, you're still you. So
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
when it comes to the military transition, the resume, the interview, where you're going to live, LinkedIn, whatever, logistics. But the
Yes.
transformation piece, and that's what your mentor, said, go
Mhm.
in the woods, go take a walk. Like this is
Yep.
transformation. You have to figure out who you are outside of your uniform, outside
Yes.
of your rank, giving you this automatic credibility on your shoulder or your chest, wherever you wear it, outside of, like, for me, when I retired, like I was used to walking into a room as a senior master sergeant and people standing. And then you
Sure.
go into the civilian sector and I mean,
No
you're
one
lucky
stood for
to get
you.
a chair, and and not that I need that, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying it's a culture shock. So this
it is.
transformation, who you are when you separate or when you retire, is not who you're going to be a year later. And so
Right.
that's why I really stress to veterans, take it 1 year at a time. 1 year
Mhm.
at a time personally, and 1 year at a time for your family as well. And then come
Yes.
back at that year, assess what went well, what do you need to improve on, and then, do that for the next year. And I also stress too, don't make really big decisions if you haven't gone through a full evolution. And whether
Yes.
that's a year, I always stress an unethical situation or a moral or a legal, yeah, make a decision, right? But your first job is probably not going to be your forever job, just because in today's, day and age, that actually may not benefit you financially and growth wise. So I know that you've had your first job for a little bit. So why don't you tell us, what are you doing now? So you've made this transition, you've gone through this 12-week fellowship, the DOD SKillbridge, that's helped you. You had a
Yes.
mentor that to tell you, hey, grab on, you're working through your marriage, and now you're at Deloitte. So why don't you take us through what you do and what you're doing for the veteran community?
Sure. You know, I love that you said, take it year by year. And that really is what I did at Deloitte. So my first year at Deloitte, I took it, I absorbed, I was a sponge. I took everything in that I possibly could, and I devoted myself to my career again, kind of like I did in the military. But I knew I needed to do that. And I told my husband, hey, I need to learn how to be a consultant because I don't know how to do this. It's not easy. It's not easy. Luckily, what I realized I needed was my veteran community.
Yeah.
And I was extremely blessed that Deloitte has our own veteran mentorship program. So I actually got a veteran mentor who was someone that had, I want to say he was already in for about 3 years post transition at Deloitte. So we met. At first, we met once a month, and then it became where I needed him more than once a month. And it was like once a week, I was like, I just need to talk to someone. I'm going crazy.
Yeah.
And then I could just bounce things off him and make sure I wasn't outlandish with like, hey, is this how it's supposed to be here? I've got a log, we talked about making a schedule. We have to log every hour that we work. And it has to be at least 40 hours a week of client hours. And that doesn't include, all the other things that you're
Yeah.
doing. And I'm like, how do I not work 80 hours a week with all this? And that was just something I didn't understand. I didn't understand, you know, when you're working in an office, you're going and having a coffee break every couple of minutes or well, not every,
Yep.
if, maybe not every few minutes, every few hours, you're getting up, you're moving. When you work from home, you don't do that. You sit for 8+ hours a day. So it is
Yeah, I have to
exhausting.
set an alarm to get myself up because
Yes.
especially when you get in work mode, because when you're working
Mhm.
in an office, you're interrupted all the time.
100%.
But when you're home, is as long as you have your space set up accordingly and people respect your time. Like when I'm at work, I'm at work. Like my husband
Yes.
doesn't come in, but like yesterday I sat at the computer for 8 hours and I'm like, I need to get up. What am I doing? Like, yeah, so it's tough.
Absolutely.
So you
And
were
like,
a sponge for a year and you had a
yes,
mentor. I did want to say Deloitte is famous for having that mentor program because I hear about it all the time. But if your company doesn't have a mentor program, so mine didn't specifically have a veteran mentor program, but one thing I did was I was HR. So when I came into Continental, I was, integrated into HR and I just
Mhm.
asked the recruiter that was onboarding me, like, hey, Emily, are there any veterans here that are in similar roles, as I am? And she's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And so she introduced me to Sean Keys, and he's still my mentor today. So,
That's
but
awesome.
proceed. Sorry.
No, absolutely. And honestly, I was after that, I'd say about the 8 month mark of working at Deloitte, I was starting to feel not the burnout, but kind of like, wow, I'm doing a lot for work, but I'm not doing a lot for me. What is filling my cup? And then I had to really do another kind of step back, go back to, I joined Deloitte, I did these things, but what are my values? What's important to me? And something that I realized was I wanted to start helping people. And I think that was kind of what drew me initially to the international space. I was like, oh, it's cool. I get to help international communities and I love it. I absolutely love it. It definitely fills my cup, but it's still work. It's not
Yeah.
easy. There's days that I'm like, man, what am I doing? So I realized I needed to do more. I needed to get involved. So I started reaching back out to my mentors, reached back out to the mentor that told me to go walk in the woods. And he said, okay, all right, now that you've got the reins, let's figure out where you can go from there. And he actually introduced me to a woman who was in charge of the core program at Deloitte. And the core program is a program that's designed specifically for transitioning service members. And I love this program. One, they have three different aspects of it. So they have core leadership, core success, and core fundamentals. So core leadership, for example, is a 2.5 day accelerated program that is held at our Deloitte University in West Lakes, Texas, which is right outside of Dallas,
Yep.
where 50 veterans roughly get to spend 2.5 days at our facility learning from other veterans that are fully employed by Deloitte. It's not a recruiting event, but it's an event that basically helps them learn about themselves, about how to transition successfully, what success might look like, what it might not look like. Maybe it's getting your MBA, maybe it's getting a job, who knows? But it really gives you a chance to kind of learn your skills, learn about yourself, do some speed networking, mock interviewing, and give them a little bit of our Deloitte secret sauce, is what they like to call it, for transitioning. And I've been honored to be a table coach twice now at that
Oh, wow.
program. And both times it fills my cup too, because just sitting around this group of veterans who are either you have to be within either 12 months of getting out or 12 months after getting out. All these people, they're like, what do we do? They're scared. And, yes, these are some of the brightest people I met. One of the people I was sitting at a table with is a Harvard graduate, went to, became an officer, did all these things. And now he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I'm like, you have a Harvard degree. What do you mean you don't know what you're going to do? But the thing is, like, this program is it's not just designed for, a person that's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's also designed for someone that maybe has 10, 11 years of service. That's like, how do I use the skills that I learned in the military to now get into corporate? I don't know how to network. I don't know how to interview because, I mean, let's be honest. How many times do you interview
Yeah.
when you're active duty? You don't. You really don't. So it's just building skills and building some foundations, but really it's a lot of self-reflection. So I love that program. They also do two other virtual ones, and the virtual ones are geared towards those different DOD fellowship programs.
Yep.
So they actually will do, I think one of them, the success is like they do I guess they're like 4 hours each, where they kind of go through like an accelerated type of program where there might be 5 room coaches or breakout room coaches, a facilitator, and then you've got 30 or 40 learners that are kind of there, and they get to dive in, ask questions, and get a virtual experience as well. So there's definitely different options for that, but I kind of already knew about the program because when I was going through my 12-week fellowship program, it just so happened that I actually got to sit through the virtual opportunity, which was super cool. And I wanted to do it. And so I reached out to the manager, told her I wanted to do it. And she said, okay, we usually don't take anyone for about a year, but you could start shadowing some people. And then if we feel comfortable and you're comfortable, then you can start getting dived in. And so I've done now about 10 or 15 virtual where I've taught virtually. I actually just taught last week. And then, like I said, in person, I've been blessed and honored to do 2 in person. And both times I leave, I think I get just as much as learners get out of it. It's just so fulfilling. And then I go back to my day job and I'm like, I'm ready to take on the next however many months of work. You can't tear me down because I have so much compassion for what I'm doing. And honestly, the fact that Deloitte does that and my company does that, and I think when you pick your job, you've got to find something that you can still be you. You can still do things that make you want to go to work every day. Knowing that I might be able to do one of those a year, even if it's only one a year, that alone makes me want to do my job every day.
Absolutely. And a lot of veterans, I will say it may take you time. Like,
of course.
You're blessed where you found Deloitte and you get to do these things, I'm blessed. I had Continental for 3 years and 7 months, and I was also able to run the DOD SKillbridge program for Continental, the Veterans Network for Continental, and just do tons of different things. But there are a lot of veterans out there that are leaving their job, 43% leaving their job within the first year. That doesn't mean that, you're not doing well at your transition. One thing I always say is define your definition of success for 1 year and 1 year only. So for the next year, what does success look and feel like? And try to identify or try to define success not around, money, cars, houses, or anything, but like maybe your mental fitness or your emotional intelligence or how your actual flexibility, your resilience. We always say that military members are flexible, agile, and resilient, but like you got to prove it. There's a lot of opportunities out there to not be those things, right? And then, so define your definition of success for 1 year, and then, take it 1 year at a time. So when you get into a position and, maybe it's not exactly what it is that you want to do, but I often ask veterans, you know what you want to do. You think based on the time you served, especially like you served 4 years, I served 20. Like I thought that I thrived in high stress, high ops tempo environments, but come to find out I had to. Not I wanted to, I had to. And so then when you have choices, because that's what being separated and retired, affords you, is you have choices. Now you're able to discover what it is you actually want to do. So it sounds like when you went to Deloitte, you learned and, pick a job where you're either going to learn, you're going to earn, and ideally you want to find one where you can learn and earn, right?
Yes.
So what are your, as we wrap up here, what are your tips when it comes to, okay, you did the fellowship, you and I sort of had ideal transitions where we did a Skillbridge, we got hired, we're at our companies for a long time, we get to do all these things, we had a mentor, people would look at us and say we're lucky. I would look at us and say we took action, right? Yes. But what are some tips and tools for those who are maybe struggling a little bit and their transition and transformation doesn't look like ours?
Not every transition is going to look the same, and not everyone has the opportunities. One, like we said, define your values. What makes the most sense to you? But not only your values, but if you are married, if you have children, what are your family values? Where geographically do you need to live? Number one, you can pick any job on the market, but if it doesn't work for where you're going to be located, then it's not going to work for you.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to make a list of, hey, this is most important to me. My number one is I have to live in XYZ state and I can't travel more than 20 miles a day for work. Okay, well then put a pin in that spot, draw a 20-mile radius and say, okay, what can I do within 20 miles? So that's definitely number one, is like define your values, define what you need, like what is your must-haves, and then maybe have a secondary list of your wants. But just because you are good at it doesn't mean it's going to bring you satisfaction every single day.
Yeah.
I am awesome at a lot of things. That doesn't mean that I want to do them every day for the rest of my life. But then also, if you're really good at something and you do want to do it, then find something that will work for you. Maybe you're not the best chef in the world, but you really want to work in a restaurant. Okay, then figure that out and, teach yourself, go, maybe not LinkedIn Learning, but maybe do something to learn how to develop
I
those
bet we
skills.
could.
So I bet you could actually. I'm going to figure that out after this because I'm curious.
Yeah, and something to remember too, your job doesn't have to fulfill your passion and it doesn't have to meet your purpose. Like
Correct.
my mentor when I transitioned, he said, "What are you on this earth to do?
Mhm.
Figure that out." And he made me come back to him
Yeah.
and I said, "Okay, I figured it out." He's like, "All right, what are you on earth to do?" And I was like, "My purpose in life is to develop better human beings who
Yeah.
develop better human beings so we can start this chain, right?" He said, "If you know your purpose, you literally can go and do that anywhere. You can do that at the McDonald's drive-thru, you can do that at the gas station, you can do that at Deloitte, you can do that
Yeah.
at Continental, you can do that at Vets to PM, you can do that being a mom, a coach, whatever it may be. So what is your purpose in life? But just
Exactly.
remember, your job may not fulfill your purpose, but it can fund your passion, it can fund your purpose. And then you leave at whatever time and you go off and you
Right.
mentor veterans or you do this or you do that. Like my friend, she walks dogs and
Sure.
that is her, like she retired
Yeah.
and she got onto Rover. It's like Uber, but for dog walking.
It's
And
great.
she literally walks like 20 dogs a day. Not, it makes her a pretty decent income for being retired.
Sure.
She loves
Yeah.
it. Your job doesn't have to fulfill your passion or your purpose, but it can fund it or open opportunities for you to do different things. So that's good.
Yes. I love that you said that because I actually met a girl who I work with, and she told me long term, she does not want to work at any sort of corporate job. She wants to be a full-time influencer. But what she's doing now, she is working her tail off so she can fund herself becoming an entrepreneur. And I think that that's kind of like what you said. If you
Mhm.
have a vision or a goal or something in mind, hey, I want to open my own craft store, I don't know, in 10 years from now. What do you need to do now to get yourself there? So set your goals, set your priorities, make a vision board, which,
Yeah.
I love a good vision board. And then get yourself there.
Yeah.
Because the road doesn't have to be perfect, but if you know that you want to go somewhere, then get yourself there. It doesn't have to mean, if you want to do IT, but you don't care what company you work for, then go do IT. Put yourself out there, do IT. Maybe that means you're doing IT for McDonald's. Maybe you're working for
Yeah.
corporate McDonald's, and that's like, oh man, I don't want to do that. Okay, well, maybe they pay pretty good. So I don't shut a company
Yeah.
down just because of the name of the company. I know someone who wanted to be in program management and became running a Love's gas station, but not just the gas station, but I'm talking an entire region. And they
Yeah.
were like, I would have never wanted to do that. But you know what? They decided to just take the interview and realize that the program management that they wanted to do, the being in charge of a huge project, they're now doing that every single day and they're making good money and they're working
Yeah.
for a profitable company and they enjoy it. So, what did they think it was like the most glamorous thing? Did they think that that's what they pictured themselves doing? No, but now they're happy and it fills the cup, it pays the bills, and it's making the family happy as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and everyone's transition is going to be different. So obviously when you
yes,
separate, that's a little different from retiring, but it all comes down to number one, understand why. Like, so you separated for your marriage. I
yes,
retired for choices and for our son to not have to move. Something
sure,
great happened within the first year when we retired. When we moved from base to base, our son never got into sports, never really kept with it, started it, but then would quit. And we're kind of firm believers like, hey, if you don't want to play anymore, we're not going to make you. And I know
right.
some people, have different opinions about that, but hey, so when we finally retired and settled in Sumter, South Carolina, he was like, oh, I think I'm going to go play football. And I was like, what? And
Okay,
he's
great,
like,
yeah.
yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm going to go play football. And I was like, well, why now? And he's like, oh, because I know I'm not moving. And I was like, oh. And so that's my why. And
Yeah.
you have your
Love that.
why. So when the going gets tough, when the transformation is tough, you said you had some, you had some tough days, and we're going
Absolutely.
to experience tough days, but we're not
Yes.
the only population that makes a career transition. Civilians are out there transitioning all the time. I'm sure you see it in
Yes.
Deloitte. In order to grow and develop, you got to move, you got to move to
Yes.
different entities of the company or whatever it may be, continental, you have to go overseas, you have to go to Germany. And that's one of the reasons why I left. I'm not going to Germany. I'm done with that.
Right.
But yeah, just kind of identify what it is that you want within this 1 year, what are you not willing to sacrifice, but what is your why? Why did you separate? And one thing I tell veterans all the time, and it warms my heart that you're doing it, but like we fought really hard regardless of what your job was, regardless of what you did, we fought really hard in the military to protect the freedoms that everybody else gets to enjoy. So now it's time for us to start enjoying those freedoms that we protected for so long. So it's great that you're out there enjoying your freedoms. And so, just to kind of wrap this up, you had a DOD SKillbridge, with hiring our heroes, that fellowship.
Yes.
And that was, we are in the veterans are supported era. So there's so many opportunities out there, hiring
Absolutely.
our heroes, 4 Block, Vets to PM. We have our SKillbridge program, so you utilize that program, you had a mentor, and then, you were hired on, and now you're doing some great things for Deloitte. So any last rounds, anything that you'd like to leave the veteran community with that, are maybe all into this military transition?
Don't sit back, lean forward, and then, make it your success story because it's no one else, that's yours. So I think that's what I'd like to leave it with.
That's great. And so how can people connect with you, Rachel?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. And as I said earlier, send me a note. Definitely send me a little note. Say, hey, this is who I am. I love connecting with people. I think it's just so much fun. I love learning about different people and how we can grow and help each other out. Maybe I can help you get connected with other folks. And then also, I'm going to send Misty some information about that core program because I love it. If everyone that can possibly apply for it does, and who knows, maybe Deloitte will make it bigger if we get lots of people applying, right? So I say that, and Deloitte's probably like, "What are you doing?" But
it's pretty selective. But hey, let people tell you no. And there's a lot of other opportunities out there. And when you connect with Rachel, make sure you tell her that you discovered her via this podcast, just so she knows where you're coming from. And that'll help her to, tailor her advice and tips and tools and stuff like that. Rachel, it was great talking to you. And I think anyone, no matter if they're separating or retiring, can learn from you. And really what I've heard is, hey, take advantage of DOD SKillbridge if that is something that you're, willing to do and wanting to do. Network, right? Network. And it starts with LinkedIn. It's part of the equation, but also, when you're working from home, don't stop doing those things that kept you grounded when you were in the military. I think a lot of us veterans, sometimes our fitness is the first to go, right? Our professional development is the first to go because we get in this, we like, oh, I'm so sick of it or whatever. But now you get to do the fitness that you want to do. So if you want to go take a walk around the neighborhood, you don't have to worry about, your 2-mile run and your sit-ups and pull-ups and stuff like that. If you want, like for me, I read professional development for 20 years in the military. I just got into fiction when I got out in the military because for me, I was like, I can't dare read fiction. I have to grow. I have to develop.
Right.
Now I love it. Like Fourth Wing. Like I can't wait until the third book of Fourth Wing comes out. So and then you got a mentor at your civilian company and you're thriving now, but you're plugging into things that, you like to do that fill your cup. And one of the things that I love that you said is like, this is not easy, and the military transition is not easy. Work is not easy. No one ever said that working was supposed to be enjoyable 24/7, but hey, discover some things that are important to you, do those things, commit to them. And then really when it comes to your transition, one thing that you said was, hey, make it yours, compare your values, your morals, your definition of success to what it is that you set out to do. So thanks for filling my cup, Rachel. I love doing this.
This is so much fun.
Yeah. And we'll direct people to the core program for Deloitte and for, your LinkedIn profile so you can continue helping veterans. Thanks for what you do for our community. And I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Military Transition Academy podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with your fellow veterans and friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Please connect with Rachel on LinkedIn and make sure to send a message telling her what you learned from this podcast. Ensure you subscribe to the Vets2PM LinkedIn newsletter and access free resources at vets2pm.com/training. Take care and talk to you soon.